So welcome to our walkthrough of a writing assignment. We're going to start with the first steps that, the steps that the Writing Center uses to break down the parts of writing. So we're going to start with understanding the assignment first. So the first thing we need to do is look at our prompt. And all my prompts are published on eCampus, always on the week right after the last paper is due. So as soon as we finish one paper, we go right in to start the next one. For this example, I'm going to use my Rogerian argument prompt. Even if you are doing a Rogerian argument for my class, please make sure that you do go look at the actual prompt I post for your class, because it may end up being a little bit different than this one. So I'm trying to figure out what I need to do. I know that I'm going to be writing a Rogerian argument, and there's a lot of information on this prompt. If I need more information, there are a lot of other places I can go to. So if I'm saying, what's a Rogerian argument? I can look in the textbook. I can look in the index of the textbook because we keep switching textbooks. I don't want to say what chapter exactly it is. But look in the index of the textbook to find out where it's covered. Also look on your schedule. Hey, the chapters that we cover, when we come back, when we're doing a Rogerian argument, that would be where that is. And you also can, maybe you're using this walkthrough to help you with a different assignment. Look for a proposal argument or a definition argument or a narrative or a rhetorical analysis, whatever we're doing. You can look in your textbook, look to the assigned chapters. Also, I provide resources on eCampus. So if you look at our eCampus page, here's the one with the prompt. This one happens to be under week 6. Then if you look under the next couple of weeks, you get materials that build and help inform what you're doing for that assignment. So I have an example of a Rogerian argument. I have a PowerPoint that walks through creating a mini Rogerian argument. I have a PowerPoint on diplomatic language for Rogerian arguments. And I even have for Rogerians a PowerPoint that really specifically walks you through exactly creating that outline. So you have all these materials to help inform you and help you figure out what you're supposed to be doing. Also notice that the prompt is very specific. I say what happens in the introduction, I say what happens in the body of the paper, what happens in the conclusion, where the thesis appears, what the thesis should contain. I have some sample thesis sentences for you to look at. I also tell you what kinds of sources you need to use on your prompt so you can see. For this assignment that I'm looking at right now, I have to use 2 sources from the Blinn library that do support my side of the argument, and I have to have a source that disagrees with me. That can come from the Blinn library or from somewhere on the internet, as long as it's a respectable source. So I need to make sure that whatever I'm talking about is something that I will have sources for. So that's going to help me narrow my topic right there, because I can't talk about something that is really specific to me. For example, it's a source argument. So I don't need to be making an argument like why my roommate should do his own dishes or something like that. Because that, you can't, find sources for that. So I'm going to keep that in mind when I'm brainstorming. I'm not going to go over understanding the assignment too much, because that won't help you. This specific assignment won't help you with every assignment. You need to know where to look to find that information. So in the chapters covered in the textbook, on eCampus, and primarily the prompt. I think most of my prompts give you enough information that you're set with a map for that paper. So the second thing I need to do is I need to find a topic, and that takes us back to what the Writing Center calls pre-drafting or brainstorming. So I need to come up with ideas for what I'm going to write about. And to help you with that, I do have on eCampus, and again, it might be in a different place, but I will have, guess what? There's a search on eCampus too, where you can search topics. So you can search for the topic, and look for the Finding a Topic worksheet. So I have a worksheet that you can use to walk through and look at the steps you can follow to find a topic. I even have an example that's already filled out, and this one's filled out for Buffy Summers, but you get the picture. So it walks you through, it asks you to think of features that you have or communities you belong to, and then issues that affect you as part of those communities. And there's a lot more that I walk through. What are some questions that relate to that? And you don't, unless I've asked you to turn in this worksheet, you don't have to fill out everything. It depends on whether I've asked you or not. But it walks you through looking through the topics. Notice especially one of the things that I ask is what kinds of sources are going to address this topic. So if it's a really recent topic, you might only find news sources about it. So if you're being asked to look for academic sources, you might have to choose a topic that's been studied a little bit more, that's maybe more global than local, that kind of thing. So it depends on what kind of sources you're asked to be used. For a research paper, I generally require a specific number of academic sources, so you have to pick a little bit more of a broad topic possibly. For this topic, the Rogerian argument, I say it just has to be sources to support you through the Blinn database, and your source for your opponent can be from the internet, so you're not restricted. It could be something that is newer, but it probably can't be something that's too local. So what I'm going to do right now is pull up a blank document here, and I'm going to be trying to come up with some ideas. So I'm going to think of communities that I'm a part of. So right away, as a woman, as a feminist, I'm interested in gender issues, and you'll notice that appears on Buffy Summers' worksheet as well. I'm a parent, so I'm interested in issues that I face as a parent. I teach at a community college, so I'm interested in education. And I can't type and talk very well. So I'm going to look at all these things, and I'm going to go look for some topics that relate to a lot of these. So for gender, there's consideration of equality in maybe some different circumstances. Social standards, employment, compensation, those kinds of things. What else? Gender. Medical issues come up with gender, so health coverage, maybe abortion. There's probably more that I could think of if I want to go look for more. Media representation, that's a big one. So maybe looking at, say, female superheroes, or just female-centered narratives in general. If I'm looking at parenthood, looking at some specific issues that affect parents, there's a lot of controversies in how you raise your children. If you look at those, discipline methods, sleep training type things, feeding, there's a lot of that. A lot of issues with parenthood. I'm just going to stop there before I fill this whole page up. So I want to get some here under education too. So what could I think about with education? Issues with the value of a college degree, or maybe even a specific major. English, hint, hint. What types of schools? So should students go to community colleges first? I mean, I think they should. I think it's a good value in most situations, but you know, I'm sure there's someone who disagrees with that. Funding for education, that's a big one. And if I'm talking about funding, I can talk about that from different angles. So I can talk about how individual people should fund their education, like you should or should not take out loans, you should or should not work a job, what kind of jobs are best for students, that kind of thing. Or I could look at sort of a national level. So should the government fund education? In what ways should they fund education? That kind of thing. So as I look at these issues, I have to decide between them, and there's going to be some reasons why I'm going to weed out some of these. For example, I need to make sure that I can have a civil conversation with the person I disagree with, and I can advocate for a compromise. I think right away I'm not going to be able to do that on a lot of the gender issues. So should men and women be treated equally? Yes. Can I compromise on that? No. So I'm not going to make that argument in a Rogerian paper. That's not going to work. If I think, and especially, hey, as an English major, I find this one, media representation, really interesting. So can I make arguments about the ways that media include female representation? So how are females represented in video games? How should they be represented? That kind of thing. If I want to look at parenthood, and look at the arguments I could make. Do I have a strong opinion on these? In a lot of cases, yes. And in this one, it's less a case of I can't compromise than I don't really care what other people do. I feel like in a lot of these situations, for example, sleep training, I have a method that I think is the best for my family, but I'm not trying to get everybody to do the same thing I do. Things I don't think is compromising are some car seat issues, like you should be safe, right? And we have scientific background for that. So I'm going to highlight that. Education. This is a really good one, and I think a lot of these topics would work very well for this paper. It's a little bit distanced. It's not as emotionally charged as some of the other sections I have here, so there's a lot of room for discussion and compromise. This is also going to be something I'm going to find a lot of sources for. So I think that works. I would have to narrow that down a bit. And certainly types of schools, I do have a different example that I show you where I do make an argument about attending a community college first. And that the sample that I make is actually a proposal argument, but I could certainly do a Rogerian argument about that. I could find someone who disagrees. So I need to choose between all these topics. The one that I'm going to choose in this case, and part of why I'm doing this is because I feel like it's going to be a little less complicated. For my purposes, I don't want to worry about narrowing down media representation. I don't want to repeat my sample that I already did. So I'm going to focus on car seats for this one. I'm going to focus on extended rear-facing car seats. So I'm going to find someone who believes in turning children to face forward at the earliest available age, and I'm going to reason with them about why they should or should not do that.